From the English countryside to the Spanish countryside, a dominated TCR class contrasts greatly with the tide points at the top of GT, and much like last race, Barcelona is a new track on iRacing. Known for its difficulty in passing for high downforce cars, this Spanish circuit might just offer up a better show with our touring cars. It's going to be a new experience for all as we get ready to watch round 2 of the V-TEC GTR series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Samuel Ryman. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Crackers Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. With it being used frequently for winter testing, Circuit de Barcelona gets action year-round, and as such, we had some time with cars on the track to give you a closer look at it. Welcome to Circuit de Barcelona. The home of the Spanish Grand Prix for nearly 30 years, it's easy to forget that this is a relatively recently built track in Europe. It's known for its long, sweeping corners and hosts the highest level of open-wheel and motorcycle racing. Placing an emphasis on a good aerodynamic setup with high downforce cars, it's often overlooked that it offers plenty of overtaking for lower-tier racing as well. In fact, most don't take into account that this adaptable track has 5 different layouts to choose from. These range from the nearly 3-mile-long Grand Prix version to the minuscule 1-mile club circuit. Because of the pit straight being the longest acceleration zone, Elf is the most likely spot for drivers to get a pass done. After that, your next hope might be into La Caixa, which, depending on which layout you use, could be a sharpened set of 2 turns or one long hairpin with an opening radius. In the early 2000s, a chicane was added close to the end of the lap, but the old Europe car corner can still be run. The Spanish fans have some gorgeous views from the many hills dotted along the track. And with the international fame this place has built over time, it's no wonder they're almost always full come race day. There you see some nice shots of that countryside I was talking about. It really is beautiful around here, Sam, and I think iRacing has outdone itself on the level that they've brought these tracks to.
Yeah, they absolutely have. But you know, one thing about the circuit, as new as it is on iRacing, Joe, it doesn't always have the best reputation in modern times in Formula One or high downforce car racing because of the chicane towards the end of a lap. It reduces the potential for passing opportunities down the front straight. But the good news for fans who feel that way today is that's not the case. We're running on a bit of this historic layout here at the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya. We are not running the chicane towards the end of the lap. That's going to give these drivers a great opportunity to make passes down the main straight. However, even though the drivers are going to be concerned with that, I think their primary concern today, Joe, is the hotter temperature. Very high track temperature today, and it's only increasing as the day goes on.
You can see right there, 137 degrees Fahrenheit. That they are racing here today. They're up into the 50s in Celsius, which is getting incredibly hot. Now, why don't we take a look at the points that we've got, those 2 races under our belt for the first weekend, starting with the GT3 standings, the GT Pro standings. We have Callum Wright and Richard Galuska tied at the top. Tobias Burka is about 25 points behind. Nick Brown and Lucas Eidelberg round out your top 5. But we'll be watching those top 2. They were fast last week. Sam, what about the TCR Championship? How's that shaped up?
Well, there's a lot more cars normally in the TCR class, so as you'd anticipate, it will be a little bit tighter, and it is fairly tight between now 2 leaders in the standings right now. Marcus Walton has just 16 markers over Simon Jacobson after 2 rounds, and they're currently first and third fastest in practice respectively. They've got a pretty good scrap going on from third on back though, despite the fact that none of those drivers have changed position after the first 2 opening rounds.
And in case we have viewers who didn't watch last round, the first race of the series, why don't we go through the race details for today. As we mentioned, we are in round 2. You can see they have 2 different classes. The GT class has the Audi R8, and then the TCR class has the new RS3 that they're racing. It is fixed setups, though, in this series. So drivers don't really have to fiddle with that. And they have 2 races, a sprint, which is 15 minutes, and a feature, which is 30 minutes. Of course, they also have to worry about penalty points if they have offs, which is easy to rack up here since it is a modern F1 course and there's plenty of runoff. So they have to keep it clean to try and get the most points possible out there today. But qualifying just getting ready to start. 10 minutes here, Sam, with mixed traffic. But this is a pretty long lap, so I'm guessing most of the drivers will be able to find themselves their own little space.
Yeah, hopefully, and hopefully they'll be able to find that space on the outlap. I may have just confused some viewers, and it's actually understandably so. There have been 2 races so far this season, but of course, the reason you don't see any changes in points reflected in the graphics is it's 2 races at 1 round. These races feature a sprint race and a feature race, and that's what we're getting ready to watch today as well. So that's why the point standings wasn't showing any change in position, because of course we've only calculated the points after the opening round, which happened to be 2 races.
Yes, exactly. They get separate points for each race, so got to make sure people understand that aspect of this. Usually, and you talked about the high downforce cars such as F1 racing here, qualifying incredibly important. But these GT cars with a little bit less downforce should be able to follow closer in some of these longer corners. So, what do you think? Is it still pretty important for them to try and get a good qualifying in here, Sam, or will there be enough opportunities that you don't need to stress out if you find yourself on the second or third row?
Well, I think anytime you have a 15-minute race, which is all this first race is, you've got to prioritize qualifying. The winner of a 15-minute race is not going to start back at the grid. Even if our fastest driver has a poor qualifying, I don't think he has enough time and luck on his side to work his way through the entire field that quickly. So if you're going to win the race, you want a good qualifying, and then it might be hard to get past if this track doesn't have too many passing opportunities. If Pastor Maldonado can win here from the front of the field, I'm sure these drivers can too.
Oh, throwing shade on Pastor. That's
Hey, he deserved that win though.
yeah, he worked hard for that one. As we watch some of the elevation change as well. I think something that gets overlooked here is that there is a fair bit of elevation change throughout this track. Watching some of our drivers continue on in the qualifying. Right now, we don't have a time yet on the board, but we should be getting some soon with drivers having worked their way through much of their first time lap.
Yeah, I think Tobias Burker is our first driver on course who will put a lap on. And as you see, even when these drivers who were straight out of the pits right away cross the line, we're already going to be about halfway through the session. So they want to get that clear track, Joe, and do it in a hurry.
Absolutely. It takes a minute to get around here. Maybe not literally a minute, but you get what I'm talking about. For those wondering about the temperature that I mentioned in Celsius before, about 58 degrees Celsius on the track surface. It stayed, now that it's shifted into qualifying, just around that marker. There you see 138 degrees Fahrenheit currently. Burka's coming around one of the final corners here through Banque Sabadell and then into Europe Car. And then one more corner to go. Very fast right-hander onto the front stretch, but the start-finish line comes early since they used the timing line for that they use for qualifying in F1 here, Sam. So let's see what he's got. So 146.8 is the first one to be put down. And then a 47.3. So Lucas Eidelberg not close enough to be able to topple Burka on the first asking.
Yeah, that's a good lap time from Burka, 3/10 faster than anything he did in practice. We'll see if it can hold up. Richard Galuska was not able to set a time, and he is a driver to keep an eye on because he ran a 1:36.2 in practice. Fastest time in practice, I believe that was 1:45.4 by Colleen Wright.
Ledwig gets himself first on the board for the TCR class. Wonder if we'll see some drivers who lack a time with the paved runoff that we've got here that could potentially nullify a lap. Watching Richard Galuska still try to get his first time lap in as well. He was very strong at Silverstone. Probably doesn't want to start at the back here. Watching Simon Jacobson as well coming around.
Yeah, I'm watching our fastest driver in practice work his way around the final corner right now. That's Callum Wright in the number 31 car. So we'll see if he can duplicate his 1:45.4 from practice. That would easily put him at pole here in qualifying. And he does indeed run a 1:45.5. So new drive up top, Callum Wright.
Wow, 1.3 seconds ahead of Burka. And Burka's actually just getting ready to respond. Let's see if he can find some of that massive time that he has got to close down to get closer to the pole here. Burka crosses the line. It is a 46.6. He improves by 0.2. That is not nearly enough to get himself into the mix.
And it's about 10 seconds gap between our different classes here. So Callum Wright currently sits on pole in the GT3 class with a 1:45.5. Marcus Walton currently sits on pole in TCR with a 1:55.5. New driver in second place. You just saw Richard Galuska go over the line, still a few tenths short of Wright.
Richard and Colin were the two that were fighting for the win. They're the ones tied up at the top right now in that GT class. The good news for the TCR class is that it was Walton who scampered away with things last round at Silverstone, but he had a much bigger margin in qualifying and in race pace, we should say. Today, it's only at 0.2. Dietzold is currently the one chasing him in second, but he's got a ways to go to finish this next lap. Walton actually just getting ready to come around.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you've spoke too soon here, Joe. Hold on off on that thought for about another 2 seconds.
Oh, and that one didn't count. So
never mind. But remember, at Silverstone, Walton's struggle was, if he had anything he was struggling with, Joe, it was in the short stint, getting his tyres up to temperature. And that's why I think he's still got some time left to take out of that 1:55.5 in qualifying right now.
I mean, will tire temperature be an issue today, though? I have to imagine they'll come up pretty quickly with what you're seeing on the surface of the track. Watching Linford now. This will be his first timed lap. No, it won't. Both first two laps for the 34 have not counted. He has got to hustle around and get himself one that actually counts. Had some off tracks somewhere, apparently.
We've had a change up front in TCR, by the way. Simon Jacobson has taken it from Marcus Walton by 1/10. So their battle there will continue, unless Walton can, of course, improve a few tenths, as I'm expecting him to. What about Galuska? Can he improve a few tenths? If he does that, he gets the overall pole, but he didn't do it this time.
Another lap that unfortunately had an off somewhere, and it has been discounted. For those who get frustrated at F1 stewards for allowing drivers to abuse track limits, you cannot do that on iRacing. It is all automated, and if you go over the boundaries, doesn't matter where it is, if you lose or gain time, it gets erased. We're down to less than 2 minutes to go. We're watching Hundej come around. He sits in 5th in his class with a 56.2. Let's see if this one's any quicker as he comes down to the timing line. It is not. About a 10th off of his quickest time. He'll get one more shot.
He's going to have to hope he gets... he's pulling off here. Yeah, while the drivers behind him are going to have to hope that they get by Nick Brown. Nick Brown just had a spin on the front straight, and so hopefully he's not off the pace and holding them up a little bit. Speaking of being held up, Callum Wright is trying to get by Jan Gersitz on track right now. Those two are Manselin and Senna in it, going down the front straight, running wheel to wheel, and I think Wright is going to win this battle just due to the performance of that car, and there he goes. That's not going to help either their lap times, though.
Just in front of them, Marcus Walton crossed the line. Excuse me, Marcus Walton. And he is now half a second ahead of Jacobson with a 54.8 on the board for the number 7. So back up to the pole for him.
Yeah, and that was to be expected. Even if he's not struggling to get the tyres up to temperature, Joe, you had to know something else was coming, because his fastest time in practice was a 1:54.5. And even that's still a few tenths short of 1:54.8. But yeah, it's over half a second quicker than the rest of the TCR field.
Let's see. Let's see, Galuska just came across, and he did not improve last time. A 46 flat, still trying to take that pole away from Wright. But Wright has been dealing with a lot of traffic. He just had to go by Jens Ledvig as well. So I'm not sure that he will be improving his time. Watching Olsen, his last lap at a 56.1 as his quickest as the checkered flag comes out. Looks like Nick Brown going to cross and does not improve his time.
Yeah, Nick Brown at Silverstone in practice and qualifying was struggling to keep the car on track, but when it came time to race, he had some decent performances.
Few drivers finishing up. Jan Gersitz has yet to set a time. Let's see if this one's going to count. A lot of offs for him, and it does. A 50.1. That's good enough for 6 in the GT class. See Burka continuing around. He's on the inside of the second row with his 46.5. The 171 is going to try and complete this lap. And we saw him going side by side down the front stretch, so not sure that this is going to be quicker, and indeed it is not. Winton, though, does improve and actually goes faster than Burka. He takes third away at the last second.
Got about 3 more cars left here. Milo Limford unable to improve. I think he's fourth in class, and actually Howard and Galuska getting in each other's way exiting the final turn. That's not going to help Galuska's lap time. I think we've just got 2 more left across the line, Joe. That's Evan Dietzold sitting third in TCR and Tobias Olsen sitting 6th in TCR.
Dietzold's going to abandon his lap as he comes into the pit lane. Let's see if Olsen decides to finish it. Yes, indeed. He's going to stay on the racing line. Coming around New Holland and onto the front stretch. His quickest is a 56.1. That's good enough for 6 in class. And now he ups it to a 55.6. Make that P3 for Olsen. A lot of changes here in the dying moments of our qualifying, but the grid has been set. So let's go through your starting order. It is going to be Callum Wright on the pole in the GT class. He's got Richard Galuska starting next to him. These two will continue their battle, these teammates. Sam Witten will be starting in P3. Then you've got Tobias Burka, who gets demoted down to the outside of row 2 on the final lap of qualifying. Lucas Eidelberg will be starting in 5th. Jan Gersitz is in P6, and Nick Brown did not get a time in here in qualifying, but he will be starting at the back of the GT field.
Yeah, and then TCR, Marcus Walton comes out on top in there by about 0.6 of a second over Simon Jacobson. Tobias Olsen will be starting from third in class ahead of Evan Dietzold. And then on the third row of TCR will be Milo Limford and Chris Howard. Niles Hoonchenge will start behind him, 13th overall, actually 14th once we move Nick Brown up, ahead of Jens Ludwig. Jeff Jacobson, Matthias Leibig and Nicholas Morelli will round out the field because Nick Brown will be bumped up to start at the back of his class.
We're all starting to grid up behind the Porsche pace car to take the short pace lap here, and then we'll get going for the 15-minute sprint race that you're joining us for on the V-TEC GTR series. First round proved to be pretty exciting up at the front of the GT class with Callum and Richard being incredibly tight on pace. And of course, behind them, we saw Marcus Walton really scamper away with things on the first one, on the sprint race, and then everybody kind of sussed out his weakness and had to fight him for the win on the second race. Walton starting from the pole down in that TCR class, if he can get ahead and manage to hold them back with these hot temperatures on the surface, which, by the way, has increased, Sam. It is now 140 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's 60.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, that's it. I was waiting for that number because I did a bit of research online. I'm like, what is 60 degrees Celsius? It's 140 degree Fahrenheit. Quick update, though. Nick Brown is starting at the back overall, so the TCR guys won't like that too much because that means he'll probably be working his way through them. We'll see how that all unfolds.
And I see some of them starting to move. It almost looked like Brown was trying to maybe see if he could go by the group before they started. Could possibly get the stewards to wave him by before they get to the green.
You don't really have a lot of time to do that. By the way, Drew, 15 minutes. This is going to time out to about 9 laps.
So not many.
No, they are letting Brown go by.
Yeah, I kind of figured they should have the ability to clear his black flag in this race. So that should at least make sure that that's not any sort of major drama out here as they now come up towards New Holland, and the pace car has to come in early, so it gives control over to Wright, and he takes off right away. He is off like a shot out of New Holland. Green flag waves here for round 2 of the Audi TCR series, and they come down towards Elf, already spread out, so no opportunity for Richard Galuska, but we might have an opportunity for third. Down to the inside goes Sam Winton. He's got it on the first half. Second half it switches back, and then now they come through the very long right-hander.
Oh, this could be disaster. This disaster. Off goes Ludwig. Off goes another car hard into the wall. Dietzold is in the gravel as well. Very few leaders got through that, I think, because Marcus Walton did not get off to a good start. So Simon Jacobson leads the TCR field, but then one car just got caught up in the grass. It couldn't brake too well into the heavy braking zone into turn 1 and goes bowling, knocks 2 other cars into the gravel trap.
Oof, that was messy up at the start of the TCRs. Thankfully, only took 1 car out, and then there was a third car that was in a completely separate incident. So I'm going to try and update you on that. Right now, leading the way is Jacobson up at the front of the TCR class. Walton, once again, just not good at the starts of these races. He's got to work on that. Already he's under pressure from Chris Howard behind as we now look at the GT class. See, Wright and Galuska starting to stretch away, Sam.
Yeah, so Walton did not get a good launch. So, it mentioned in the TCR again, as I think we're watching now overall leaders here. Walton did not get a good launch, and I think he would have dropped all the way back to 3rd place, Joe, but he kind of got lucky by being able to get through that turn 1 calamity.
Across the line, Wright going to be your leader on the first lap. Galuska follows. Sam Winton, who is fending off a battle a little bit earlier on, has Nick Brown already up behind him. Jumping down to the TCR class to finish their first lap, Jacobson ahead of Walton, but Marcus is looking strong off the final corner, coming down to Elf. Already we're seeing some weaving as Jacobson tries to break the slipstream. I think Walton might run out of straightaway, but he's going to look anyways. He pokes his nose to the inside, and there's just not enough room.
Yeah, well, I think we learned, as Jacobson overshoots turn 1 there a little bit, I think we learned at Silverstone that if Walton gets up out front, there's really no stopping him. So that's why Jacobson is going defensive early on. He knows he's got to do everything in his power to keep Walton behind him. Now they're on the inside for turn 4 here. Hope we don't see a Rosberg-Hamilton at number 2, but that's not the case. Wow, this will be an incredible pass. It's not going to work. I was going to say...
Too late on the brakes for Walton, yeah, and unfortunately, what was a battle for first for him now means that he has to fight just to stay in the top 5 as Milo Linford is coming up behind him.
Yeah, I still wouldn't count Walton out for the win yet, but it's going to be a little bit trickier now.
That's Morelli behind them in the orange machine as he almost loses it himself. They now work their way towards Campsa. And I'm with you. I think Walton, with his pace, could still come back and get this thing, but he's got very little time with this being the sprint race. As they come towards Lakaija, he's got to hold off Linford. Linford could be late on the brakes here, but nope, he's going to think better of it, comes back in line.
Second place in TCR is now an interesting battle with Walton Becker, Howard Olsen and Huntrenj all battling for second. But I want to take a look on the front end of Howard's car here. Is this an optical illusion if we can get a camera on the number 131 of Howard? Because it looks like his front end is crumpled, but I can't tell if that's just the paint or it is damage, yes.
Yeah, it looks like it's just the paint. It is a bit of a strange little scheme that he's got on the front. So I think he's clean. But he's going to have to hold off Olsen and Hundhedge, who are gaining down the front stretch towards Elf, but neither of them able to gain enough to really give a go. Still see a peek to the inside from Nils, and eventually he comes back to the racing line. The continued battle between teammates of Wright and Galuska up at the front has pulled away by about 1.7 seconds over Bruton. Richard has not been close enough for an attack, but he's at least staying in range. If we get a mistake from the number 31 of Callum, that could easily swing back towards a fierce fight like we saw 2 weeks ago.
Already about 5 minutes, third into this race. Things spinning out a little bit, but the action definitely isn't over. We still have lots of drivers running nose to tail, and very easy to make a mistake here, of course, with the high track temperature. And was that a mistake by Howard there?
It was indeed. Olsen tries to capitalize, but even though he was wide through Worth, it just wasn't a long enough run up to camp. So Olsen going to get another bite as they come to Lakaja. At first, a bit of defense from Howard, but then he comes back to the racing line as they break for the hairpin. And I think he might be able to have it if he could just get the job done and slam the door shut. Olsen manages to do so. That gives him second place.
Howard still going to hang strong in third. He's having a pretty good race, by the way. I mean, I'm sure a lot of it has been because he was able to get through the turn one mess, but he started much further back in the class than what he is running, and now just trying to hold on to those positions. But it's going to be tough because behind him is Hundedge, and behind Hundedge is Walton.
Now, Walton has already managed to leave Linford
and
behind
Howard's
him.
going back on Olsen. Here we go. Down into the braking zone, into turn one. Olsen's going to try and hold him off, but he's trying to do so on the high side. And Howard had the inside line. He now has the outside, but as they go into the next corner, it swings back into Howard's advantage. And Olsen is now under pressure from Niels.
This is really backing the group together. Hundedge has the desired line down into Repsol, but he looks for both and he outbrakes himself. That's going to send him into Howard. Howard gets the worst of it. He keeps it from going completely off track as Walton now looking on the inside of Olsen, but we're going to look at the replay. And I can tell you that Olsen did manage to get that spot back, but it looks like he just sent it in way too deep.
So they're still battling, Joe. Olsen right ahead of Hundedge, right ahead of Walton, and Howard and Linford still not too far behind. So second through sixth in class, really. Throw a blanket over them, and Simon Jacobson is thinking about what he wants to have for dinner tonight, meanwhile. But these three, that's far from their mind as they head into the braking zone. A bit of a softer braking zone than the modern configuration. They're going to go out a little bit wider here.
Chris Howard went awful deep into that one, and that means that Linford potentially get the spot from him. Wonder if Howard is a little bit damaged from that contact that he had. Looking a little bit under threat as now we watch our mid-pack and the TCRs come to finish another lap. Olsen, while he's got a gap, is really want to take advantage of it because Marcus Walton might have Hundedge down the front stretch. He's already looking to the inside.
Yeah, long front straight here. I always liked on old video games while I was racing AI cars, seeing how many cars I could trigger in a wreck down here. I think I tried that on lap one as well, but Walton's not trying that right now. He's trying to pass cleanly, and he does it up to third.
Back on the podium for our pole sitter in the TCR class. You're not missing anything in the GTs. Wright still leads Galuska with a handicap back to Winton behind them. This is where the action is. And finally, they're going to be single file into Repsol this time. Already halfway through the sprint race.
Yeah, that clock in the top left is not good news for Walton, because I'm sure he can get by Olsen here in the not too distant future. He's already right on his rear bumper, and I think he's the fastest driver. The thing is now, they're, 4 or 5 seconds up the road from Jacobson, and going on the math we did earlier, this is going to be about a 9-lap race. That means 4 laps left to go at the line, and I'm not sure Walton can pass one car, run down 5 seconds on Jacobson, and pass him in just 4 laps.
It'd be a monumental effort, that's for sure. If Jacobson makes any sort of mistake, that could certainly help, but it seems to be a little bit out of Walton's hands, as you pointed out. Morelli, who is at the tail of this train. This goes all the way from 2nd to 7th. Very
Just
close
a couple
to Linford
seconds
now.
covering. Just 2 seconds covering them, I think, here, Joe. But that could be about to change if Walton gets a good run on Olsen here and runs away. Let's see, though. Olsen's got a nice run out of the corner. Walton is on his gearbox, but he doesn't really have a run. And I think it would have to be an ambitious pass into turn 1 if he wants to pull it off now, but he's going to try for it. It's not too ambitious. He is late on the brakes, and Olsen might not put up too much of a fight. Let's see if he tries a switch back through turn 3. He will, but Walton's still there, and Walton has the inside line for the next 2 corners.
Swinging around Renault, one of the longest turns on this track. He does look for the over-under, but Olsen doesn't have the speed. Walton even goes to cover him off slightly as they break for Repsol. And he doesn't even need to do that. Now he sets his sight ahead. He's got 5 seconds to close down in less than 5 minutes. That seems like too much of an ask to me.
Well, it'll be a little bit more than 5 minutes when you add the extra time for the final lap.
This is true.
Oh, Howard going defensive on Linford back here at the tail end of this train. Oh, I think there was a little bit of contact there.
Howard just not having a good day. Let's stay with this battle in case Linford manages to get another go, or even don't forget Morelli back there in the popcorn position. In fact, he looks pretty good through Campsa. He's closer to Linford than Linford is to Howard. Does he have a go at him? He could send it in deep. He does send it in deep, but it's on the racing line. Tries to stay out of the back of Linford. Thankfully, no contact.
Walton is pulling away from the pack, but Olsen is sticking with him. Olsen might not be done with thinking about second position here.
Which is horrible news for Walton, because that'll slow him up if they start fighting. And again, all he needs is a good run out of New Holland. What can Tobias do? The number 32 tucks it nicely neat into the apex, and he is going to get the slipstream. He might actually have a shot at this. Here they come, down to Elf, Sam.
Run down in the main straight. Walton good defensive on Olsen for second place. Olsen having to go to the outside. This is where he lost the position last lap. Maybe he's learned a thing or two. But it's probably not going to work. Walton's still ahead as they head off into the right-hander.
He tries to duck it back in early. He's actually a little bit closer this time than he was last time, coming around Renault. Repsol can offer a sneak attack. If you're close enough, he's close. But no, it's not meant to be. Oh, he gets right underneath that rear spoiler, though.
Just mention it, but there's been a bit of a shake-up in the middle of the field in the GT3 class. Nick Brown has had some kind of mistake and dropped from 4th to 6th. We got Linford and Howard running side by side, and this is pretty much a single file turn. They're coming up, and they're trying to do it 3 wide.
Morelli thought about it.
Contact. Howard wins it.
Linford shoved off of the track unceremoniously at Worth, and Morelli going to take advantage. Let's take a look at the replay of that one. I couldn't believe that Morelli was thinking about that.
I think Maldonado tried that once. It didn't end well.
Might have even given a slowdown penalty to Linford. I wonder with how far back he fell back there, as Morelli's not done with things because he's on the inside of Howard. And now they come up to Europe car, and he's got the inside. He's going to be given space by Howard, who goes way wide off the corner, has to clatter over the curb. New Holland way off the racing line into the marbles and even into the gravel for the number 131. That loses him out on the exit of the corner, but now they fly down the front stretch and don't look now. Here comes Linford back at them. Faster than both of them through the corner. You were talking about that 3 wide. We might get it again, and it looks like Linford's going to back out of it.
For those of you who are born too late, now you realize why us Formula One fans are so mad about that final chicane. When they have those flat-out two right-handers or almost flat-out, boy, does it shape up for some great racing down the front straight. And this battle is continuing all the way from the end of lap number 7. We're several corners through lap number 8 now, and they're still all over each other, with Morelli holding them off and almost 3 wide into the corner there. Morelli still holding them off, but he goes out a little bit wide. Linford goes underneath. Howard says, hey, I might eke my nose in here too, but Morelli is going to triumph for now, but this is not over.
Morelli up to P5, behind him a decent exit from Howard, who gets ahead of Linford. This is definitely not over as they come up to Worth, but Howard can't get to the inside of Morelli. Could he maybe set him up? Oh, he's very wide coming off the corner. Didn't get a slowdown penalty, but through Kampsa, too wide. This is also not a corner you usually go too wide through, and this is going to slow them both up, and Linford knows it. He gets the launch off the corner. He manages to get to the inside of Howard. He looks to the inside of Morelli, but he has to brake early to make sure that he doesn't run into him. Down into Lakaja, and it looks like Morelli still holds on to fifth.
You know who we haven't mentioned, Joe, is the guy about to win the race, because Callum Wright is almost a lap ahead of this battle now, and he's hoping he doesn't catch him because he doesn't have Richard Galuska second overall with just a few turns left to go, not too far behind him.
Oh, this is going to be a little bit sketchy as they come into the final corner. Checkered flag comes out for Callum Wright, and even though he gets checked up, too little, too late for Galuska to take advantage. Victory for Callum Wright. Meanwhile, where is Jacobson? Still about 4.5 seconds ahead of Walton, who has been towing along Olsen. I wonder if Olsen just basically grabbed the coattails and has been riding the slipstream for a little bit of extra pace here at the end.
Well, Walton has not been half as fast as I expected, Joe. He's only caught up half a second in that second half of the race. But this battle between Howard and Linford and Morelli is still on. And you know what, Joe? They were the last drivers to cross the finish line before the leaders, so they can all take each other out if they wanted. They're not going to lose anything, and they might just do that.
3 wide as they come out of Repsol. Oh, they almost come together. Morelli deep onto the inside as Howard tips him, looking for an over-under to take 2 cars. Linford sees if he can maybe pull a tricky move. It doesn't quite work out. Howard with a strong exit. They come up to Worth. This is where he got bumped off before. This time he nearly gets tipped off again. Linford, Linford was the one that got tipped off. He was in a reverse roll. He had the inside as they come off of Kampsa. Now he switched to the outside for him. Howard down to Lakaja, leads the 3 of them, and this is all fighting for what is effectively 7th place.
Yeah, effectively to not be last place, but the driver who will get first is coming through the final turn right now. That's Simon Jacobson. Kudos to him.
Jacobson, coming off the final corner, is going to take victory in what is a boring race compared to what we've got behind him. Going back to Linford, he's lost out to Howard. Coming up into New Holland, he is well clear, but Linford needs to worry about being tipped from behind. That is Morelli trying to chase him to the line, but no, it is going to be Howard that triumphs.
So that's
Wow.
5th, 6th, and 7th in class. I'll tell you what, I think we normally get to talk to our podium finishers here. Now I get rid of all of them to talk to Chris Howard after that one.
Same, yeah. I'd rather talk to those guys. Let's go through the results of this race because, man, that was wild at the end. Wasn't up at the top at the GT class. Callum Wright, even though it was close by about 3/10 across the line, Galuska didn't look like he was threatening until that final corner. He took 2nd. Winton finished 3rd behind them, a distant final podium spot. Burka had to settle for P4. Lucas Eidelberg with 5th for him, with Nick Brown, who had gotten himself up to the podium at one point, but then fell back down mysteriously. He winds up in 6th. Not sure what happened to him. And then Jan Gersitz had an unscheduled move into the pits and wound up with 7th. Sam?
Yeah, Nick Brown headed north towards the end of the race. As far as TCR cars are concerned, there you see your podium. We didn't see much of them on track in the end. It was Simon Jacobson, 5 seconds still ahead of Marcus Walton. So that's painting a nice picture for Jacobson for race 2 as well. Tobias Olsen rounds out the podium. Hoonchedge finishes in 4th position, and then behind that, really the race of the day is Howard in 5th, Linford in 6th, and Morelli 7th in class. Then you get to the drivers who fell a little bit to the wayside: Matthias Leibig, Jens Ledvig, Jeff Jacobson, and Evan Dietzold. I think we've got some drivers to talk to, Joe.
We do indeed. We have our winner for the GT class, Callum Wright, joining us. Callum, it looked like you had things pretty under control. And then I know if I were in your position, I would have been sweating a bit seeing the battling ahead of me with your teammate so close behind coming to the finish line.
Well, it was closer last week, to be fair. I managed to keep my composure, but when I made mistakes, Rich made mistakes, so the gap stayed the same pretty much throughout the whole race, to be honest.
Came down to 0.3 of a second at the line, so he did try and pressure you, but last time we saw the roles reversed. You and Richard swapped around to now tie the points before we came into this round. Do you think Richard will be coming back strong to try and do the same this week?
Well, if he wins the next race, we'll be tied on points again. I've just got to go and win it, or pray someone hits Rich.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be a very tight fight. Well, again, congratulations on a sprint race victory. We'll hopefully get to talk to you some more after the feature.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
It's Callum Wright. And then we have our winner in the TCR class, Simon Jacobson. Sam has caught up with him.
Yeah, Simon, this win great for 2 reasons. Obviously, you win, but also that puts you in good position for the next race too.
Oh yeah, it was quite a start though. Saw some cars flying behind me in the rearview mirror, so I was a bit frightened in going into T1. But yeah, had a good battle with Marcus, and I think he made a mistake coming into one of the corners. I don't remember where it was exactly, but I saw him running wide, and I don't know what actually happened. I know I was defending the inside coming into that corner, but could keep it clean from then on, which was very nice. And obviously with this hot track temper, I mean, it's almost 60 degrees track, so it's really melting the tires away. So that's really the key with this race, is to manage tires.
Yeah, he did just run off. I don't think you had anything to do with it, but I'll tell you what, you were able to keep him way at bay when he did get back up to second place. So congrats on that, and let's see if you can keep it up in the feature coming up here.
Yeah, thank you. We'll see. I'll do my best.
That was our winner in the TCR class. And next we've got Richard Galuska ready to talk to us with his second place. Richard, Callum was saying that you made mistakes whenever he made mistakes. Were you pushing hard to try and run him down?
To be honest, no, I wasn't pushing that hard in a sense, because the tire temperatures and the track temperatures were so high that it was just a fight to keep the car on the road, to be honest. So I was kind of using him as guidance for where I was driving, and so that's probably why I kept making mistakes when he did.
You know, I was asking Callum if he was nervous coming up around the final corner because you had all that battling up in front of you, and that seemed like the best opportunity. Is that what you were thinking coming in, that maybe that was your chance to sneak the win?
Yeah, I didn't have the pace during the race to actually really have an opportunity to get past him. Mostly ended up sitting about a second behind him and having the slipstream to help me out. So I was aware that that was going to happen, kind of umming and ahhing if it would have been a bit of a cheeky move, but I probably would have gone for it, to be honest, if the opportunity had been there, but it wasn't quite.
Of course, we asked Callum about whether or not he thought you would try to come back at him, and he mentioned that it would tie up the points. Do you think maybe it'll come down to keeping away from penalty points, the off tracks that'll hurt your championship, to see who could have the edge, the way you two are so close on pace?
It seems possible. I wondered if there would be a really big gap between us for this race, or at least a markable gap, so it would be different, but it was pretty close again, so it's possible. I was aware after the first round actually that I'd picked up more incident points than I would have liked to. I think that race was fine for both of us, so I'll certainly be keeping an eye on it just in case.
All right. Well, we will as well. That was second place, Richard Galuska. And we also have second place in the TCR class. Sam has caught up with Marcus Walton.
Yeah, Marcus, we all saw it on camera. Can you tell us what happened there?
Hello. Yes. Well, first I didn't have the best of the start, and well, later in turn 4 is I think I wanted to brake a bit later as I was on the outside, but obviously I didn't get any grip at all. It was just understeering, and lost a few positions, but was able to fight back. I killed my tires in the progress, I think, so I struggled a bit with Tobias behind me, but in the end, P2 is okay for me, I guess.
So you mentioned that mistake did your tires in because of a hot track temperature. You think that if you had a bit more pace, if you kept your tires clean, you could have ran Jacobsen down?
I don't know if it was because of the incidents that I killed my tires. Maybe I was pushing too hard, overtaking the other positions. I will try for the next race to handle the tires better, be a bit more patient. Yes.
All right, we will see. Good luck.
Thank you.
Second place, Marcus Walton in the TCR class. We're going to take a quick break here on the Global Sim Racing Channel, but today's event is not over. We have the feature race coming up, so don't go away. All the more action heading your way here at Circuit de Barcelona. Welcome back to Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya as we watch the drivers warm up for our feature race. If you missed out, we watched Jacobson win in the TCR class and Wright win in the GT class. So will that change around here today? As we take a glance at that layout once again, if you missed it the first time, 16 turns that they'll be racing around on the historic version. And we talked about how much this track is sometimes looked down upon by modern fans, Sam. But man, that was some incredible racing that we got in the first round.
Because of those final 2 turns. I mean,
Yeah.
I know why F1 races at chicane. It's for safety things. And on a serious note, I think MotoGP race a couple of years ago, there was a driver killed when they tried to do the normal course, if you want to call it the normal course there. So, but to get back on the lighter note, of course, these drivers are closed cockpit. These cars rather are closed cockpit, and of course it's the iRacing world anyway. So everyone's gonna be safe, and we can race the scarier course and have a fun show. And we saw a fun show, and hopefully another one coming up here. Of course, with pit stops added in. But I'm really curious to see what's going to happen down in the TCR class now, with the fact that we did not see. We did not see Marcus Walton take the victory, and he's going to be starting on the back foot. He's going to be starting from second position this race, and so we've noticed his weakness. If there's any weakness, has been the starts or the early portion in the race. If he's going to be starting in second, can he hold it together this time and make his magic work in the long run? Of course, the fact that 30 minutes will buy him a bit of time and opportunities.
And he will have that extra time. This is a 30-minute race for this one compared to the 15-minute race. You talked about the pit stops as well. Pit entry here is, I guess I'd almost compare it to places such as Okayama, where it has that curved pit entry. So I'm kind of wondering if that'll catch any drivers out who are trying to maximize the most speed to get the best out of their in and out laps. If we could see some mistakes from that even.
Pit entry, but also pit exit, Joe. It's a long straight we got here at the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya, and even though it's not hazardous really, because the racing line is on the left side of the circuit and the pit exit line is on the right side of the circuit. If you do have a car exiting the pits, racing a drive on track, they're going to come together in turn 1. I think we saw a classic example of that between Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel in Formula 1 just a couple of years ago. And, so there definitely could be some drama if we see some drivers play some strategy games out there.
Drivers will certainly have to practice their braking in that first one coming out of the pits. You can see Burka in the warm-up has the quickest lap currently, as he just set that time. Drivers are still trickling in the last bit, and we'll get to the grid here soon. For those wondering if the temperatures have changed, well, unfortunate news for the drivers, not a whole lot. It's cooled down, Sam. It's only 136 degrees on the track surface now. But the temperature actually in the air has gone up a bit. It's 90 degrees outside currently. So the fans are getting a little bit of a hot one out there in the stands, in the virtual stands today. Thankfully, I don't think virtual sweat will cause them too much discomfort. We've moved ahead in time virtually as well.
Yeah, and I think practice is about to end here, Joe, and we're about to advance to the race session because, of course, qualifying for the feature race, or rather the grid for the feature race, is based off of the results in the sprint race. And even though the clock is saying 10 minutes in the top left corner, they're cutting that short because all the drivers are here. Let's go racing.
Absolutely. So the checkered flag flies sort of prematurely, but they tend to do this in this series just to make sure that we get the racing in. So here is your starting order for today. On the pole, for the GT class. It is Callum Wright with Richard Galuska starting in second. Next to him, very similar to what we saw before, Sam Winton will be P3, followed by Tobias Burka in fourth position. Row 3 has Lucas Eidelberg starting fifth. Nick Brown will actually start with him this time. He will be sixth, and Jan Gersitz, with his bad finish last round, will be in seventh. Sam?
Simon Jacobson will start 8th, and now Marcus Walton will be starting 2nd. Let's see what he can do about that. Tobias Olsen will be starting 3rd, and Nick Huntred will be starting 4th. Of course, we start the way we finish the sprint race, which means Howard, Linford and Morelli are all together again. Yay! I'm sure, though, they know this is a 30-minute race, so we might not see 3 wide turn after turn at the very start here. Behind them will be Matthias Liebig and Jens Ledvig. Jeff Jacobson and Evan Ditzold will be starting from the back of the field.
Now, last time at the start, we saw a mistake that shoved a driver into the grass down into Elf, and as you described, it went bowling, unfortunately taking out at least one of our competitors in the TCR. Hopefully it'll be a little bit cleaner down into turn 1 as they now take off behind the Porsche pace car. Certainly, it seemed like one of the hot spots was down into Elf as far as passing goes. Lakaija, which has in modern times been shortened and tightened into that double apex turn, I thought would have offered more passing, but we didn't see a whole lot of it into that long sweeping left-hander. It really is, like you said, Sam, where these double corners coming out of the final part of the lap open things up for these cars onto the front stretch. Allowed them some great opportunities. So what's the opportunity going to be at the drop of the green? Waiting a little bit longer this time, Callum Wright. Now he accelerates away, but he doesn't get as good of a jump over his teammate. It is awful tight with the green flag coming out here for the feature race today at Barcelona. He's got the inside down into Elf, but Richard could be late on the brakes. Behind them, don't forget about Winton and Burka as they close up side by side for the corner. And Richard might have the run coming around the outside, almost shoves into him. And just as these two come around Renault, we almost have to go to the TCR class, which is starting as well.
Yeah, they're already through the first couple of turns, Joe, and Jacobson leads, and Walton has been shuffled back to 3rd because Chris Howard still wanted to go 3 wide. He's poked his nose through the middle of the field, carved his way up into 2nd in class, and is following Simon Jacobson and Marcus Walton getting defensive on Tobias Olsen. And there's contact between Walton, pushes Howard, Howard saves it, Walton bounces off of Olsen, so Olsen goes up into 2nd, Howard is in the gravel. Walton hasn't lost that much, but how badly damaged is his car?
Wasn't it Howard that got shoved off in that same corner coming through when it was, I believe, Winton trying to make a pass? We'll have to look at that a little bit later, but I can tell you that Galuska didn't manage to get by Wright. We almost had what you called a version 2 of Rosberg and Hamilton down into Repsol as he tried to duck inside, but then thought better at deep into Lakaija for Sam Winton. And Nick Brown is looking at that one thinking maybe he could sneak through, but it switches back into Banco Sabadello, and as they weave through there, it looks like Winton is going to be able to hold him off.
So Winton ahead to Burka. Joe, I'm trying to work out how Evan Ditzold has got through half a TCR field already. He started at the back. He's 5th.
As down into turn 1, another little look from P2 on P1. Galuska can't quite make it stick as behind them as well. Brown and Winton still duking it out. Eidelberg just behind in the popcorn position. He could make something happen if these two tangle. Right on board from Brown, looking back at Winton now.
Okay, I want to clarify when I said Howard went off deep into the gravel in that turn 4 incident we saw last lap. But wasn't Howard who really got the short end of that. It was Nicholas Morelli who ended up going very deep into the gravel, got beached a little bit and has fall back. Meanwhile, we got some action on screen here.
Yeah, this is a battle for 7th place. Ledvig, you see at the front of that 3-car train. Liebig chasing Jeff Jacobson, also close behind. They weave through Repsol into Seat. This is one of the slow downhill corners, can be awful frustrating, especially in these front-wheel drive cars. And Liebig not able to capitalize on Ledvig. Instead, he's now under attack with Jacobsen looking strong off of there, but it's a short run up to Worth. That was a horrible run through that corner. Liebig barely holding off the likes of Jacobsen, who we ride on board with now.
This is Jeff Jacobsen running much further back in the field than Simon Jacobsen, of course, leading the TCR field right now. So, fortunately, we shouldn't get their two names mixed up with them running so far apart. But early stages here, the TCR field has had an eventful start. The GT3 field has been a little bit calmer, but still pressure for the lead up there. How? Nick Brown sets the fastest lap of a race. I swear, every time we join and I see him doing qualifying, it looks like he's lost. And then the race starts and he's just on top form.
Boy, if he can get his qualifying down, he could be a real contender between Galuska and Wright, who haven't pulled away from him too far. It's only 1.3 seconds up to that battle for first, which, well, now we look at the TCR cars heading into turn one. Jacobsen is leading Olsen, but we have a change for third because Walton manages to get by Hundhedge, and he could set off to try and get himself a win that he missed out on in the sprint race.
Yeah, of course, Walton's able to run okay now, where, well, he's not in the midfield, he's battling for third and fourth, but, you know, if he does have any damage on the front end of his car that could be hurting him aerodynamically, he might not be feeling it right now, because he's got the slipstream of the cars ahead, but now he's worked his way out of the front midfield, almost kind of, if you call the middle of the field middle class, economically he's in the upper middle class right now. He wants to get to the upper class. Jacobsen and Olsen a couple of seconds up the road from him though.
Take a look at Galuska closing in. Oh, he's setting himself up well here, Sam. If he can stay close coming out of New Holland, this could mean something for the number 30. But he starts to fall away, and he's struggling off of those corners. He talked about in the post-race, Sam, how these hot temperatures make it hard just to keep the car on track, let alone be fast.
Yeah, and you're probably not going to worry about tyres doing your pit stop here because it's only a 30-minute race. Despite the track temperature, you still lose a bit of time. They're hitting 160 miles an hour into that braking zone in turn one, so high speeds, the aerodynamic toe definitely coming into play down there, and then you get, oh, the track temperature's cooling a little bit, Joe. Put on a sweater, it's 135 degrees.
And of course, the air temperature staying at about 90 degrees. I wouldn't wear that sweater too long. We watch our two leaders coming out of Repsol into Seat. Galuska once again keeping his teammate honest. Callum Wright could look to sweep today's this event that we have at Barcelona. Meanwhile, in the TCR class, they're dealing with lap traffic coming through, and actually that holds up Walton. That was Gersitz, who's trying to find his way back amongst them, and Hundhedge is going to try and take advantage of that as they swing through Renault.
Yeah, Walton definitely got compromised there. Hundhedge was able to let the faster GT3 car by on the straight, whereas Walton got held up in the turn. Hundhedge is being a little bit aggressive, trying to get third place back, but not happening now. Meanwhile, that GT3 car is holding Olsen up a little bit down at the bottom of a hill for second place, and not the desired place for Olsen to be running side by side. And that's unfortunate for Olsen. That's going to cost him time on our race leader, Simon Jacobsen. He wasn't too far behind him.
Jacobsen spying that F3 box behind him, and Gersitz almost looks to the inside through Kamsa, but thinks better of it. He's not battling with anyone. He really doesn't have to press the issue here. Now he's going to be able to get by.
Yeah, well, now the next car up the road from him is for position. The problem is it's about half a minute up the road.
So a little bit more polite with our leader than he was with Olsen. Let's take a look at Galuska, though. Still holding within about 0.3 of a second. Nick Brown's not been gaining. It's still about 1.9 between himself and second place.
If any cars were damaged early on, Joe, they might think about putting in the next couple of laps to short pit. I think everyone got away, though, okay, so we should see most of the field go deep.
getting close to that pit window. It's should be able to make about 20 seconds in both classes. And that was a very good run from Muska coming through Worth. Still holding right into the tire tracks of Callum Wright. These two didn't have much trouble in them last race, but don't forget about Nick Brown in this thing, now that he's managed to get himself into clear track. It sounds like we got some action going on for fifth once again. Dietzel, Power, and Ledvig.
Yeah, Dietzel out wide there, almost gets tipped by Howard. That was two different lines coming together there. Howard had to back out, and that cost him a position to Ledvig. But Dietzel, I mean, he must have had a very interesting onboard on the opening lap when all that carnage was going on, because somehow he worked his way from the very back up to fifth in class, and so far he's been able to hold on to it.
Still tight together, coming through Worth. Behind them, all that battling means that Liebig might be able to gain enough to get into the mix. This is all a fight for P5 between them. Dietzel out of camp, so well clear. Oh, and it was awful close down into Elf between Eidelberg and Burka. It was within 1/10 of a second. But Burka took a look at it, but decided better of it. He's still close behind. Repsol looking awful strong. Burka should have been much higher up, considering the pace that we saw from him earlier. So I suspect he'll be able to get by the 128 sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it could be some strategy games going on out there, of course, with the drivers who haven't had good starts. Maybe they're thinking about saving fuel so they don't have to pit as long during their scheduled pit stop. We'll wait and see if that plays to the advantage of drivers such as Nicholas Morelli, who got pushed off out wide on the opening lap, lost a bunch of time, and I mean he's not able to save fuel while he's running on his own out there. But let's see if he can come back into this.
They didn't hit this time wide. So we jump up to Olsen here, and I believe, as he now was looking ahead, is instead starting to glance in his mirrors, because a look to the inside from Walton, getting very close behind, thinking he could get second place away. That was where he finished last race. A bit off there for that exit for Walton.
We're coming up to a potential passing opportunity down at this left-hander here. In Formula One, they actually give the cars DRS down this straight nowadays. Doesn't do a whole lot. It's not the best pass.
For a leader.
Yeah.
Jacobson handing the lead over, and unfortunately, it looks like Olsen goes deep and gives it right back into Lakaija. And this brings Walton into the battle for the lead, as the top three are separated by less than a second. Let's stay with this, because they're coming to the front stretch. There could be an opportunity, especially for Walton, who is now very close behind Olsen. A critical mistake for our race leader when he had this thing under control.
Is definitely going to think about trying to pass Olsen, because his competition for the race win is right there in front of him. He's going to get a nice toe, but of course Olsen is getting a slipstream off of Jacobson down the front straight as well. Olsen out wide. Walton, he's already made this move work a couple of times today. Let's see if he can do it one more time. This is where it plays to his disadvantage, but Olsen does not get through turn 2 well, so up into second place goes Walton, and now he can think about running down Jacobson for the lead. Jacobson's got a little bit of a gap ahead of him. But I'll tell you what, Joe, I don't think it was a very well-served slowdown, because if he made that mistake back at the chicane a couple of turns before, he was slowing down right at the part of the track where he could get past. He should have got that out of the way earlier.
And this is certainly played into the hands of Walton. One driver you don't want to give easier opportunities to, that is Marcus in number 9. Didn't get a chance into Seat this time. Olsen still close behind. If he sees the two of them battling, he could maybe scalp a position. And do we have a pitter? No, we have an accident with Jan Kursitz. happened here? Trying to figure out where this is. Looks like out of Campsa that he'd had an issue.
Yeah, they're
and our
going by
leaders
it
just
right
went
now,
by.
down the back straight. Well, that single car, it's got to be because there was no one else around him.
Yep, I think he just spun it, slipping it up on the AstroTurf to the outside. Yeah, not even the AstroTurf. He just started to get loose mid-corner. The Audi unfortunately nosed directly into the barrier. And I think he may have taken tow.
I think we've got to go back up to the TCR lead, Joe, because Jacobson has missed the apex through the final corner, and that's going to give Walton a bit of a run down the front straight. Walton has already made this pass work a bunch of times today for different positions, but not for the lead yet. Can he do it this time around? He's down on the inside, but Jacobson is going defensive. He knows that's the way Walton's been doing these since, so Walton's going to have to do it a bit harder this time. There's contact between them. Olsen might be able to take opportunity here, but no, he's not. He's side by side with Walton, though. Down the inside, Olsen will get second back. Meanwhile, great scrap for fourth going on behind these two, but Walton and Olsen, I think, made a bit more contact there.
It was very, very close. Let's stay with this, but I can tell you that Galuska and Winton have now pitted. This is the battle for the lead in TCR that we're watching wide, and Olsen may be able to get P1 away from Jacobson. He briefly had it for less than a corner earlier last lap. Coming around the outside of Seat, he's going to have to really work for this one. Walton is watching both of them licking his chops. They need to be careful with this side-by-side action. Down into Worth now, the inside to Jacobson, but it's going to switch back into Campsa, almost banging doors now as they come up to this quick right-hander. Olsen gets his nose ahead, but he's got to carry the speed off the corner. They now work their way down toward Lakaja. Is Walton going to think about making this one 3 wide? He ducks down to the racing line. All of them breaking into this left-hand hairpin. And up ahead, Jacobson manages to fend him off, but the door opens slightly for Walton. It switches back into another long right-hand corner, so Olsen might be able to hold him off, Sam. This is not over as they're all just separated by a few tenths.
I'd pit. If I was Walton, you can't get by these two right now, and even if you can't, you're not going to do it without losing time. No, I wouldn't have. I would have recommended pitting there, because as these three hold each other up, we've got a great scrap going on from 4th to 7th behind them right now. Although they're all running single file because they see this opportunity. They're like, wow, the top three are having it out. Let's run single file, work together, and we'll catch them down. Because here they go side by side again. Jacobson on the inside, Olsen on the outside. Olsen deep into the braking zone.
Too deep, though. Look at him off into the gravel, nearly. He manages to hold on to it, but that mistake was all that Walton needed. He is back through into second place. This has been an incredible fight for the win in the TCR class, and Jacobson somehow still our leader.
This didn't work last time. Didn't work last time out there, Walton. Looking to the outside to turn 4.
Yeah, he goes for the sneak attack into Seat. Still, he's covered off. Jacobson goes defensive into this sharp left-hander. And behind them, Olsen is starting to drop off a bit. It's becoming a 2-car battle. This is exactly what Walton would want. The less he has to worry about what's behind, the easier it'll be for him to go on the attack. Now they come down to Lakaja one more time. And it doesn't look like Walton quite close enough. If he's desperate, he could send one in deep. Still covered off.
Oh, but Jacobson's gone in too deep. That opens the door for Walton. He's going to just sneak on right by. But the disadvantage to this, of course, Walton's finally got what he's been wanting for 2 races. The disadvantage is that Jacobson will have a slipstream down the front straight.
And don't look now. Here comes our leader, Callum Wright, the GT3 driver. Oh, and there's someone thinking about what you were thinking about. Simon Jacobson finally pits, looking to get out of this mess.
Yeah, but might not matter anymore. Walton's broke free. I mean, Olsen has several car lengths behind him. Look at the amount of cars following him into the pits, actually. So as long as Walton it runs a clean lap or two out here, things are looking in his favor.
Dietzold follows him in. Liebig, Krundhedge also in the pits. Morelli pits this lap. I see Eidelberg in the GT3 class is coming in, but Callum Wright has not yet pitted. He is well clear. Galuska, has he been in open air as well, honestly? Because we saw some traffic for Callum. So this might be a clever strategy from Richard to have pitted as early as he did. We also need to update you that as we were watching all that action, that Brown unfortunately had a spin.
That's his second. He has strong performances, just can't get to the end cleanly, unfortunately. Entering the closing moments of this race now.
It is tricky conditions, so, you know, we kind of give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. The 130, I just saw him slide actually through Seat, so it looks like that car is a bit of a handful.
Of course, with a track this hot, when you make one mistake, it's just going to make the rest of them come easier because you burn off so much of your tire.
Still waiting on Wright to pit, and I think he's going to have to this time by. Not sure that he can go any farther. So as he comes up to the pit entry, no, he's going to stay out.
So Wright's been able to save fuel.
Burka doesn't pit either.
Walton comes in, our TCR leader. So of course the big question here is where does he come out with relation to Simon Jacobson?
Jacobson's just coming out of Lakaja. Then through Bog Sabadell. So he's close, as we'd expect, as it's only been about a lap or two, but is this going to be close enough? Walton, we see, still stationary in his stall. Jacobson was 12 seconds. It's counting up. Oh, it's very quick for Walton. Walton only 10 seconds. That is horrible news for Jacobson fans, as he was 2 seconds slower in his stop. Walton is well out clear.
Yeah, I think Walton did the same thing at Silverstone as well. He was able to take just a minimum amount of fuel he needed to get to the end and had a quick stop there that put him back into contention after a rough start.
You see the pit comparison between them on screen. Walton, a masterclass, not just in speed around this track, but in the pits as well. Can anybody stop him? We're still waiting on Callum Wright, Burka, and Brown to come into the pits to find out where they sit with Galuska, who is our highest pitter right now in the GT class.
Yeah, unfortunately, Brown, after his spin, even though he's running third now, he's going to be shuffled a little bit down the order when he pit. Wright stays out another lap. He is going to have a very short stop when he finally comes in.
Impressively long for the GT class. Burka also continuing on, and Brown is going to pit. So this will hand third over to Richard Galuska, while the battle has settled itself out up at the top of the TCRs. The mid-pack, or the middle class as you called it, Sam, still very close. Ledvig and Dietzold are trying to sort out fourth place.
Yeah, I mean, I've already mentioned how Dietzold must have had a mega start. Ledvig hasn't had a bad race either, from towards the tail end of the TCR field at the start to fourth in class now, I believe. Yep. Hey, Wright should be coming out of the pits now. Yeah, he's way ahead of them. Oh, my bad. Yeah, I saw a car in the pits. I thought it was Wright for some reason.
Yeah, no,
hey,
right.
Nicholas Morelli. Nicholas Morelli is out of a race. Not sure what the story is there.
Let me see if I can find it. He might have just decided he had no opportunity to try and catch them.
Yeah, second place has just switched over in TCR. Jacobson has gotten it from Olsen. Honestly, we'll get a replay of that because I think... Well, actually, no, let's keep here because Olsen might want it back going on the outside into turn 4. But something must have happened to Olsen because he was actually quite far ahead of Jacobson, I think, after the stops.
Yeah, it happened down into the first corner, but Jacobson ahead of Olsen only by a hair. And at this point, it is fighting for best of the rest because Walton has stretched away to 5 seconds. And finally, Callum Wright comes into the pits, but Burka stays out. So much farther than we expected these cars to be able to go around this track. Galuska coming down the front stretch. Wright is now coming out. This actually is going to be very, very tight. And I think Galuska might have him as he streams on by down into the first corner. Your new effective leader, even though it was for second place here, should be Galuska.
And that's surprising, because I would have thought with the amount of fuel saving Wright had been able to do that, he would have been able to have a very quick stop and get out ahead.
But Richard, a little shaky coming through. Renault almost lost the car, and that lost him time. Callum very quick in his pit stop, but you know, we saw Callum have to go through a lot of that TCR traffic. I honestly think it comes down to that.
Yeah, good. And talking about TCR traffic, Jacobson and Olsen are still scrapping hard for second place. Jacobson walking Olsen all the way over to the inside down the front straight. Olsen having to go to the outside. He has no choice. He's a bit late on the brakes. I think we've seen that a few times out of Olsen, but he hasn't always been able to hold on to it. This time he is, but is on the undesirable outside line as they head off into the third corner. He might attempt some kind of switchback. But I think if he is able to get a good run out of a turn, that Jacobson should expect that and defend to the inside. No, he's leaving the inside door open. Obviously, he thinks Olsen's a little too far back, and he's right. Olsen can't do anything about it. So Jacobson holds off the challenge this time, but second place still very much up for grabs in TCR.
Breaking down into Seat as we watch the number 33 just ahead of us, the 32 of Tobias Olsen giving chase. I can report that our last driver in the GT class, now Pitts Burka, coming in, should relinquish the lead back to Galuska.
We'll make a note of that, though. We'll make a note of that, though, that Wright is not far behind Galuska. It's not Galuska's race yet.
About half a second separating P1 and P2. As we watch this battle for second down in the TCRs, coming into Lakaja. One little mistake from Jacobson, and Olsen will be pouncing.
Of course, one driver loving this now is Marcus Walton. He's just been able to run away from this without any issue. Also, Jens Ludwig and Chris Howard running fourth and fifth, not too far apart. They'll be closing in on this battle for second as they scrap away, but I think we might not see a battle this time around. Jacobson has a few car lengths out of on Olsen as they come to the front straight, although we'll wait and see. Olsen might be able to get slipstream, but let's also keep an eye on this battle, Joe.
Yeah, right. Still within half a second of Galuska. And I can tell you that no attempt was made into turn one between Olsen and Jacobson. Still, oh wow, look at how tight. Less than a car length behind him now. Callum Wright wants this win back. He wants to try and get that edge and stop this tie that they've had in round one and are looking to have again here in round two. See how much from that onboard. They are struggling to control these vehicles. Back onto the front stretch, Callum Wright. This is looking a little too far back.
Yeah, I'm running out of time as well. With just 3 minutes left to go, I think we're looking at a 2-lap race, Joe.
That's what we're getting from timing and scoring as they come up into Renault. Callum Wright sizing him up. Last time he had the measure of Galuska, and he led every lap. Not going to be the case this time. Can he manage to squeak by?
You're also keeping an eye on this. Jacobson able to hold off Olsen for now. When they come to the line this time by, they'll be at the 2 to go. They haven't quite made it there yet. Jacobson ploughing the cones out the way that they'll get your penalties in autocrossing, but not here today. In fact, Jacobson's been able to extend his lead over Olsen just a little bit.
That's the safety net he needs onto the front stretch. We look back from Jacobsen and onto the front stretch where that slipstream in these cars has been very helpful, but it won't be helpful for the 32 this time by. He was way too far back.
Yeah, nothing happening this time. Again, that's 2 laps to go. Galuska's gone deep, Joe. Galuska's gone deep, and that's going to open an opportunity.
Callum side by side with him. Now they come up to Bank Sabadell and still side by side up into Europe car. Callum Wright not willing to give this one up, but it's a long way around. Maybe the over-under as he breaks early into Europe car. In fact, that gets him a run, but he's too close coming into New Holland. Still one more shot at it as the white flag comes out down the front stretch. This might be his last good opportunity. Is the slipstream going to be enough? The battle for the lead in GT comes down to the final lap. Galuska does not defend. He leaves the door open for Wright, but Wright isn't going to send the attack in.
He was probably feeling quite comfortable with that gap. I'd say there's one more good passing opportunity, Joe, and that's the end of the back straight where we saw Wright almost take the lead last time around because of Galuska messing up. But honestly, on the final lap, every corner is a passing opportunity.
And through Repsol, not quite an opportunity there. Don't forget, they've got Jacobsen in that TCR car as well as Hundhedge up ahead of them. I think they're going to get them before this lap is over. Jeff Jacobsen currently holding off to the right side. He's going to let 1 and 2 by, but it's unfortunately putting Callum Wright slightly off the racing line.
Yeah, that's not going to help him here because, well, they're coming up to the last good passing opportunity, really. Walton getting ready to start his final lap in the TCR class. Let's go back to that lead battle.
Galuska once again a little bit deep, but this time a little tidier as well. Callum Wright got by Hundhedge in the traffic. It's looking a little too late. I completely botched that phrase, but regardless, it wasn't botched horrible enough for Galuska to lose the lead. As he comes around New Holland, it's going to be a tie once again unless we get some penalty points because Galuska takes victory here in the feature race.
Until... Yeah, P4 and TCR is really one of the best battles we still have left. It's Chris Howard and Jens Ludwig running 4th and 5th. Evan Diesel has dropped back at some point. He must have had a mistake or something. He was up here earlier. The Jacobsen-Olsen battle for 2nd and 3rd in the TCR club. TCR class has broke up a little bit in Jacobsen's favour, but still half a lap left to go, so anything can happen. Although, providing he has enough fuel, I do not see Marcus Walton losing this race.
Walton easily ahead by about 6 seconds over that battle for best of the rest. We ride on board with Walton now coming down into Lakaja. We wondered if it'd be harder for him starting from 2nd place, and though we did have to work for it, it seems like nobody is able to stop Marcus. He's only been interrupted once from winning, and that was in the sprint here today at Barcelona. The number 9 coming around Europe car and then New Holland. Victory today, even though he missed out on it last race in the sprint race. A win for Walton in Barcelona.
And Walton will have time to check back over his shoulder and see who gets 2nd place in the battle. It is Jacobsen, able to hold Olsen off. Ludwig has got Howard. Howard's out of fuel. Out of the last corner. Howard loses 4th place. He drops to 5th. The finish line comes up quickly. Is it quick enough? Yes, it is. He holds on to 5th ahead of Matthias Liebig.
Ooh, cutting it way too tight on the fuel, and he was inches ahead at the line of Liebig. You see him sputtering. Just crosses it before that green and yellow car gets through. So that ends our feature race, but not our coverage. We're going to come back with the official results as well as driver interviews. Stick around because on screen you'll see all the upcoming races here on the GSRC. Welcome back after we just watched the feature race here at Barcelona for round 2 of the V-TEC GTR series. Richard Galuska took another victory, and we thought that it would tie himself with Callum Wright. But Wright, you see, there in second place, takes the points lead based on penalty points for Richard Galuska for too many offs on this race. We wondered if that would affect the championship. Sam Winton will finish in third today. It really didn't give him much of any coverage here in the feature race as there was so much action elsewhere. Nick Brown taking a nice fourth for himself. Tobias Burka with a P5 and Lucas Eidelberg finishing sixth. Jan Gersitz unfortunately crashed out and was last in that class.
Marcus Walton won in TCR ahead of Simon Jacobson, but do not count Tobias Olsen now, even though in our broadcast we probably mentioned that Walton and Jacobson are the two big guns up front. Olsen is certainly showing what he's got and had a good fight up there today, but comes back a little bit short in third place. Jens Ludwig comes home fourth in class ahead of Chris Howard, who ran out of fuel and coasted to fifth in class. Matthias Liebig will finish in sixth in class ahead of Milo Linford. Evan Dietzold is behind him after dropping back a little bit in the middle of a race. Niels Hoonted is also quite far back there, but Jeff Jacobson and Nicholas Morelli round out the TCR field, and there you see Jan Gersitz all the way back there in the GT3 class.
First up, we have our winner of the feature race, Richard Galuska, with us. And Richard, I have good news and bad news. The good news is you are tied on wins with your teammate. The bad news is you're no longer tied on points. You had a few too many incidents out there, it sounds like, and got penalty points. Were you aware of that coming to the line?
Yes, I was. Thank you for bringing it up immediately. That's very kind of you. But no, I knew with I'd already done the damage quite a few laps from the end, but that kind of didn't really matter at that point. I just had to push on and try to get a good result. The reality was that I needed to push so hard in that race to try and compete with Callum, so I wasn't super surprised. Honestly, I'd rather have the win than worry about the points.
Speaking of surprises, we were a bit surprised as well. You pitted early ahead of Callum and came out ahead of him, but you had a slower stop. Were you kind of shocked by that, or did you expect to be able to get him with the undercut?
I hoped to be able to get him with the undercut. I don't suppose I could say I expected it. I knew that overtaking the TCRs would be a nightmare from the experience of the last round. So I really didn't want to have to do that. So I wanted to get out of the traffic, and I gathered, obviously I was on comms with Callum because he's in my team. So I gathered that he had some issues. So I wasn't surprised when I came out ahead. I immediately managed to lose the car's control in the first corner. So that didn't really help the situation, but managed to hold him off. So it was okay.
The first two rounds took place on tracks that are very recent here on iRacing, but the next one has been around a long time on the service, Road America. Do you think that'll change the complexion with how much experience both you and Callum should have there?
Yeah, I'm going to immediately say that I would expect him to win there. He tends to be very strong there, and it's not one of my preferred tracks, but we'll have to wait and see how it pans out. I mean, we all know Barcelona well, even if we haven't driven it in this game, and so it was new to us in one way, but same with Silverstone. Like most people have driven those fairly significantly, so we'll see how it goes.
All right. Well, again, congratulations on the victory. We look forward to seeing you over in Wisconsin.
Cheers.
Richard Galuska, our winner in the GT class. Winner over in the TCRs was Marcus Walton, and Sam is caught up with him. Looks like Sam's having a few problems with his mic, so I'll talk to Marcus here. Marcus, you had to fight to get up to the front. You started on the outside of the front row, and you had some incredible battles to get up to the lead. A three-way fight there at first.
Yes, well, it's really nice battles. I'm quite happy to win this race. Yeah, very hard battles with Simon and Tobias. I'm not quite proud of how the race started. I got in deep into Chris, it was, I think. Yeah, that was on me. I apologized. And yeah, but later, yes, very intense. And glad it was enough to get P1 today.
Obviously, this being the first track from the Iberia region to join iRacing, does this count as something of a home win for you?
Well, look, I live in Spain, but actually I'm German, so Well,
Ah.
not exactly home, but nice to have this track. I like it. Not perfect maybe for the TCR, but it's really fun.
Awesome stuff, regardless. Next round, we're going over to a track with a lot of long straights. And usually in lower powered cars, we see it become sort of a draft race. Have you raced the TCR there yet? And what are you kind of expecting out of how this car will interact with that track?
Yes, I raced in the official iRacing series. Yeah, a lot of draft, a lot of battles, and quite dangerous, of course. It will be fun. Not my favorite track, but yeah, we will see some good fights, I guess.
Well, congratulations on the victory. And hopefully we'll get to talk to you some more once we head over there in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you. See you around.
Marcus Walton winning here in Barcelona. Up next, second place in the GT class, Callum Wright. Callum, there's the saying, may have lost the battle, but it won the war. That kind of sums up today's race with you now taking the points lead.
Yeah, that's a good point, but I feel like I should have won that race. It kind of feels like a defeat because I got caught up in lap traffic, so I kind of forgot to pit. I saw Rich go into the pit fairly early before we got to the TCRs, and I was like, oh wait, I actually need to pit. And then I just thought I'd just keep going until I ran out of fuel. But
Yeah,
yeah, it feels like a loss, to be honest.
it was some pretty fierce battling up at the front, more towards the end. Was it just a case of you were focusing so much more on him than on your fuel gauge, or what caused you to sort of miss out on that strategy call?
Just not paying attention, to be honest. It was really intense racing at the start. It was quite close to me, so I was just trying to hit the apex in every corner. And by the time we got around to the TCRs, I just forgot. Simple mistake.
And speaking of those TCRs, we've seen that things have been swapping around a bunch there, but it's been mostly you and Richard who have been fighting for the wins here in the GT class. But we've seen drivers like Nick Brown look strong in the race, even though he doesn't qualify well. Is there anybody else that you're kind of giving a little bit of a side eye to and wondering if they could potentially get in the mix if you and Richard fight too much?
Sam it's his first race. He had fairly decent pace. I think he could be up there at some point. And Tobias Burker, he does quite a lot of fuel saving. He managed to squeeze an extra lap out at the end. I was running on fumes. I don't know how he done it, but that might play into his advantage at some point this season, I'm sure.
Well, we'll keep an eye on him as well and see if this becomes a three-way battle. But commiserations on not taking the win, but congratulations on taking the points lead.
Yep, thank you. See you guys next time.
Callum Wright, clearly disappointed. A little surprised. Would have thought he'd been happy that he would be able to sneak ahead of his teammate. In the meantime, Sam's managed to get his mic under control, and he's talking to Simon Jacobson.
Yeah, Simon, you got a copy?
Yes, loud and clear.
Good, that means my microphone works. Not so good news for you, of course. You didn't win the feature race here today, but still a decent second position and some great racing up there with Walton and Olsen.
Yes, this was really a great race, very intense, and as from the first race, tire management was even more important during this race. So um, I think everyone really struggled with tires. Really, the grip was just not there at the end. It really changes how you drive the car and how you drive the track. And yeah, the three-way battle between me, Tobias, and Marcus was really intense. I tried to keep in front, and in turn, I think I used the tires too much doing so. And I tried to pit a bit early as well to get out of that battle, because I felt that there we might lose more time than actually and pulling away from the guys behind. So I thought maybe pitting a bit early might get me out of that, and if they continue to scrap up ahead, then I could probably lap them, but or jump them in the pits, but apparently not.
Yeah, we mentioned that in the commentary booth. Did you ever consider pitting one lap earlier before all that action broke out?
Yes, it was on my mind, but I felt so it all really unraveled on that lap prior to me pitting, where I sort of had some braking issues coming into some of the corners where I ran a bit deep, because the braking points they do really shift a lot once the tires wear down. So I had to sort of readjust coming into some corners there, and then that allowed both Tobias and Marcus to sort of catch up with me, and then I decided to it was a sort of a split decision actually coming through the second to last corner prior to the pit entry. I thought this is something that I should do now in order to try and get out of this and see if I can get some clear air in front once I get out of the pit, and then make up the time I might have lost.
Yeah, well, you weren't able to win the feature, but you did win the sprint race, so congratulations on that. And I'm sure we'll see another win or two, maybe more from you for the rest of the season.
I definitely hope so. I'll do my best, definitely. Thank you.
Well, Simon Jacobson, our second place finisher in TCR. Joe?
We got the final podium spot in GT. Sam Winton joining us. He was the one that was picked out as being potentially fast by our points leader. Sam, it looked like even though you did get the podium, if it wasn't for Brown's mistake, it seemed like he was scampering away from you at first.
Yeah, I had a bit of a sloppy start, if I'm honest. First race, not good, but the second one, I thought I could keep him at bay, but then he got me on lap 2, I think it was, into turn 1, and he was running away with it. I'm not really sure what I could have done. I was trying to get back on track, but as you know, there's a sausage curb around the chicane of turn 7 and turn 8, and I unfortunately drove the car over that, which damaged the car. So I didn't really think I could have got it on track. So I tried to go for the undercut, which I saw Richard do as well. I was surprised by that. But what I had in mind was I had the relative open. I really did not want to lap the TCRs because I felt maybe the undercut's really the only chance I have. So I tried to go for it, and I was surprised as well because there was about 33 seconds of optional repairs when I came in to stop. So I think I came lucky. I really did come lucky to get on the podium because Nick had the pace on me.
Well, speaking of pace, I mentioned how Callum Wright kind of tipped you as someone that he is keeping an eye on. Looking at the races coming up in the remainder of the season, are there any that are particularly strong for you that you think maybe you could get up to the top 2?
I've always really liked Road America and the Nürburgring. I've always tended to do rather well on those tracks for whatever reason. But obviously, the thing to bear in mind is that this car is using the iRacing baseline setup, which it has its flaws, we should say. Like we should probably clear up the Audi is probably about 4 seconds a lap quicker, and that's not counting the track temperature. Of course, that's going to slow things down. But with a lower track temperature around Barcelona and a normal setup, the car is easily capable of doing 41s. So we'll have to see. I think I think I can probably do rather well at those tracks, though.
The slipstream should certainly also keep you in play if you can hold on to that. But congratulations on a podium, and hopefully we will get to talk to you over at Wisconsin.
Thank you.
Sam Winton, third place today. One last interview, the last of our podium in the TCR. Sam has caught up with Olsen.
Yeah, Tobias, I've got to confess, after the first 2 opening rounds, I was thinking, well, Marcus Walton and Simon Jacobson are the class of the field, but boy, you were throwing your name in there today. How badly did you want that win in that second race?
Yeah, I wanted it pretty badly. I thought I was on for a good position after sneaking past Marcus there on the first lap, but I didn't have enough in the tires today, I think, so.
Yeah, this track is still kind of new to iRacing. How much experience do you have on this circuit, and do you like it a little more now after such a good race today?
Yeah, I thought I was going to be pretty fast at this track, although I haven't raced it a lot, but I had more practice this week than I had on the last race, so I think I was pretty prepared this time.
Well, if that's the kind of results, that preparation they're giving you, I'd say keep practicing, bud, because that was a great performance out there today. Some great racing. Hopefully you had fun. We definitely had fun watching you. And who knows? Maybe there's a couple more podium positions, maybe even the top step in your future in the next 4 rounds.
Yeah, I certainly hope so.
One last question before you go. How difficult were these cars with the high track temperature today?
I think for the first few laps, you could warm up the tires really fast. So for the first few laps, they were easier than normally, I think. But then the tire life just went out of the window after a couple of laps. So you really had to keep it smooth out there.
All right. Well, great race today, Tobias. Thanks for sticking around. We know there's a lot of people to talk to after these things, but we appreciate talking to you, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you on the top step here soon.
Yeah, thank you. Keep up the good work, guys.
Tobias Olsen, third place finisher here at Barcelona. But of course, we want to thank the organizers of this league for bringing us on for coverage this season and for some fantastic racing out on track. But also a big thank you goes to the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcasts that are listed here on your screen. Additional thanks go to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Also, thanks to the team today, Sean, Sam, and Dougie as well. And if you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. Or check us out on social media. Our Twitter is @GSR Channel, Facebook is Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram is GSRC_Graham. Head on over to our YouTube page. If you haven't already subscribed, you'll know it because you'll see a big red button that says subscribe. Click that. You won't miss a moment here on GSRC. As we mentioned, heading over to Elkhart Lake for the next round. That'll be Thursday, October 17th, 2 weeks from now. We'll kick off at 1:45 p.m. Eastern. We have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and see you on the track.